Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Remote Business Ops Line. This is our first episode, and I am just so excited to have you here. Even though I'm not necessarily talking to anybody right now, and I feel like I'm talking into the abyss, I'm sure that this video will catch someone who's watching the replay, and of course, will bring my most aligned people. All right, so let's get into it. So, in the remote business ops line, we will be tackling your operational questions, what actually goes into running a remote company, the behind the scenes of coaching company, consultants, company service providers, whatever you are. If you have an agency, we're tackling all the messy middle. Oh, and the messy above and beyond and all of it. All right, so what I did, because I knew that I wouldn't have any audience today, I actually have been going on thirds, which is where I hang out a lot with my coworkers, and also through our Pocket OBM offer, which is our offer that is like our low ticket offer, our $500 mid tier offer, rather. And I've gathered some questions. I have a lot of questions that I'm seeing all around the internet, questions that are in my offer as well. And I'm just going to answer them here. And of course, I am using this as like a hotline. No, I have my earpods in. That don't make sense. I'm using this as as kind of like the hotline. So feel free to share questions. If anybody decides to actually join, you can drop your question here. But naturally, we are going to eventually get people joining, and people are going to join from all over the world. I'm putting it out there, and you drop your questions in the chat box. All right. So cool. Let's start with question number one. The first question I have is, do I need a project management tool? When it comes to deciding whether you need a project management tool, the conversation always starts for me with, what do you have on your plate, right? What do you have on your plate? Two, how does your brain work? Are you somebody who thrives in routine? Are you somebody who likes to be scattered? Are you somebody who can commit? Or are you somebody who, if you give them a list, they will operate? And I want you to answer those questions before I talk about Notion and ClickUp and Asana and Monday and Basecamp, because the conversation needs to start before we sign up for any tech tools. Why? Because the act of project management and the act of using these tools to get work done efficiently is step two. The reason we get overwhelmed is because we think about it as step one. So let's dial back a little bit. What do you currently have on your plate? Do you have like a bunch of stuff, different projects, or do you have three to dos? How does your brain work? Are you somebody who likes a list? Are you somebody who likes a routine? Do you have ADHD? We have to really think about how we operate as people. And then the last thing is, can you stick to a routine? Okay. Also, do you have collaborators? Because that also changes things big time. If you are a solopreneur, it's going to be a different situation than if you actually had a VA or a social media manager, or you have employees on your team. That will change the trajectory of where we go. So after you've answered those questions for yourself, then we can now decide if you do need a project management tool or you don't need a project management tool. You will hear me say this time and time again. One of the biggest mistakes that I see entrepreneurs make, especially us in the remote space, the online space, is that we build businesses with tech tools, with systems, and with processes that other people have told us are good. Not because we thought they were important, not because we really wanted to have them, but because other people told us that they made sense for us. And what that meant was that we had these highfalutin things, and we had these massive build outs that we ignore every single day because they just don't suit us and they don't suit the season that we're in, right? And that's really where I want us to get. I want us to get to a place where we're doing business in a way that feels so good to us, that it's aligned with the season that we're in, and it makes sense for the season that we're trying to get into, right? So we think about project management tools and whether or not, oh, I see somebody on. Welcome. You're my first guest on the Ops line. Ta-da-da-da-da. Yeah. So we think about that and we think about having project management tools that make sense for us. So now I actually answer your question. Do you need a project management tool? Nobody needs a project management tool, okay? Nobody needs a project management tool. Nobody needs a notebook. Nobody needs a to-do list. Nobody really needs anything, to be honest. You can technically have all the things that you need to do in your head, and you can get by always remembering your task. However, what that does, it gives us such a big margin for error. So the reason I think everybody needs project management practices is because you literally can bring those project management practices and you can add them to whatever tool makes the most sense for you, makes the most sense for your season, and makes the most sense for the season that you're trying to go into. So, for example, I started working with one of my lovely clients, Taylor, when she before she had her baby and before she became a mom and before she was diagnosed with ADHD. And I mean, she talks publicly about all three things. So you can go on her Instagram and see all of that. And when I first started working with her, she was a ClickUp stan. She did everything in ClickUp. Her whole life was in ClickUp. And I remember starting out as a new OBM in the space, and she was like, "Hey, you have to have ClickUp or else I can't bring you on because I literally plan my entire life in ClickUp." So here we were in ClickUp, ta da 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 da, using the project management tool to the best of our ability, and we planned her maternity leave using ClickUp. She was running two businesses at the same time, and all of that was in ClickUp. After she came back from maternity leave and she was now a mom, and she now had to make some pivots in the way she does business because she was now finding a little bit more about her brain. She recognized that while things were great in ClickUp for collaboration, things were not. I'm going live. Oh.
As in you are live right now?
I am.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So sorry about that. So while she knew that things were supposed to be in ClickUp for collaboration, for her, ClickUp didn't make sense for her brain. So she started using Google Docs. She started using the notes on her phone. And those are typically the same project management practices that she applied in other areas. And that's why I like us to start the conversation with practices rather than tools, because tools, you can literally use the same thing, the same practice in multiple different tools. And that's why here at Zayman Co we always say that we're tool agnostic, because it really doesn't matter. You can do the same thing in Asana that you do in ClickUp. I mean, I love ClickUp. You can do the same thing in Monday that you can do in Basecamp. I mean, I like all of them, and I think all of them make sense depending on what you're trying to get out of them. So, long answer cut short, you do not need a project management tool, but just in case you want one for better productivity, peace of mind, I want you to think about how all the areas come together. I love having a project management tool, and I personally think if you are scaling and if you are collaborating with a team, it is going to be necessary, especially if you have multiple projects, you're working on different things, and you have big objectives. I think it's going to be absolutely necessary. However, you don't need it, and I don't want you to think that you need it just because somebody else says you need it. But for me, if you're working with a team, if you have multiple projects going on at once, if a routine makes sense for you, I want you to think about those things, and I want you to think about making sure that you invest in a project management tool. It is what it is. Don't complicate the matter, and don't expect somebody else to think that, to understand what's going on in your mind if you weren't very clear on what that really is. And the best way to do it is project management tool. Another thing for PM tools that we talk a lot about when we start talking agency wise, when you think about being able to have full visibility across your business, across what other people are doing, across what the workload looks like, client responses, and stuff like that. The only way you can do that is a project management tool. If you really want to have a handle as a CEO over all the little aspects, you are not going to be able to just, look into everybody's little to-do list and ask for multiple updates. Then you shift into becoming a micromanager. And who wants a micromanager? Nobody wants a micromanager. Nobody really wants to be the person who is always checking in and who always has to know what's happening. So yeah, so that's my answer to the question. All right, question number 2. What is operations in my business and what are these systems everyone keeps talking about? So this question is one of the realest questions I've gotten in a while. And I saw this just scrolling on Threads and I was like, I love that somebody asked this because when you're in the space and you have started to truly get into your thing, you become blind to some jargon, you become blind to the phases, and people just throw these things around ops, operations, systems without explaining what it is. And a lot of founders tend to feel left behind, so let's kind of slow it down. What is operations? This is simply how your business runs. How do you get work done? And how do you get work done when you're not even thinking about it? So it's what I like to call the invisible engine. How does money come in? How does work get delivered? How are clients retained? What's the customer journey and the client experience? How are people getting to know what we do? How do we manage all the different moving parts to make sure that nothing gets dropped, right? So when we think about marketing, marketing is attraction to get people into your wheelhouse and into your sphere. Sales is where conversion happens. And then operations is everything that happens after that. Now, I know that there are lots of people and gurus out there who talk a lot about marketing and sales. And that's a lot. That's why we always end up in these problems when we're like, okay, we have the clients, we have the projects, but what happens next? I'm overwhelmed. I don't know where else to turn. I'm fully booked up because you spent a lot of time focusing on the sales and the marketing, which for me it's a win-win because I mean that's why we all do what we do. We want clients to come in. So what I want you to think of operations is it's a bridge between what you actually think, your idea, your dream, and what actually happens. So your reality. So that's what operations is. Now, what are systems? Systems really mean how things are done. It's a repeatable way of doing something over and over again, regardless of what's happening around you. So, do we have steps to get something done over and over again, regardless of what's happening around you, regardless of you forgetting, regardless of how you're feeling, regardless of somebody getting the day off? These systems are in place to go on, and regardless of who is doing it, this is going on. And I want to make that clear. It is how things are done, a repeatable way of how things are done. That is it. It is not a tech tool. It is not a software. A system is what happens, how it happens, in what order, who does it, what do they use, and what is the specific time? What is the occurrence? Is it daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually? Cool. So what happens? In what order, who does it, what do they use, and what is the occurrence? Do they do it daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly? And I say that because a lot of times we get systems mixed up with tools. And people are like, oh, I need a system to do this, or I need a system to do that. You already have a system. What you're looking for is a specific tool based on, what you're trying to accomplish. So that's really what operations and systems are. I really hope that answered your question. And then the last question that we will answer is the biggest one that I think. Why do I feel busy all the time but not productive? So, busyness and productivity, they're not the same. And I love that we're going into the era of wanting to be whole business owners and wanting to be 100% in line with kind of our feelings, our expectations. And the real reason you're feeling busy but not productive is because you are always reacting. And when you live in reactivity mode, you're always trying to answer messages. Your nervous system is dysregulated because you're always thinking about what's missing and you're context switching all the time and you're fixing all these small issues. You're working really, really hard, but you're not moving the business forward because reactive work does not move things forward. Reactive work kind of, if you're always reacting, so think about it like this. I'm sitting here and I'm always reacting. I'm always reacting, but I'm not moving. But if I'm progressing and I'm moving, then I create momentum and I'm no longer sitting here, but I'm moving all the way over to the next side of the table that I'm sitting at, right? And that's really what happens when you're always reactive. You're working, but you're not moving. You're doing tasks that are popping up, but you don't have anywhere to place them. And that usually happens when we are outer loop with who is in charge of what. Two, when you're carrying too much load in your head, so all of your business systems are in your head. Three, it usually happens with a solopreneur who does not want to delegate or feels that they can't afford to delegate for whatever reason. Then we also have people who do not plan, and because you do not plan, you don't have things that are set and you don't have a particular timeline that you're running on. For if you're like that, you need a project management tool. And then the last thing is that you don't have any sort of CEO day, any CEO block where you work on the business instead of in the business and actually doing client work, right? And for all of those, there are obviously solutions. And I think ultimately it starts with one, you actually wanting this to change. Because genuinely, I think business, some people thrive on it. Some people thrive on their activity. They feel like they have to be in all the nitty gritty. And because they feel like they have to be in all the nitty gritty, then it's hard for them to let go. So let's start with the first one, where people feel like people don't want to delegate, right? So the first thing there is that if you can't afford to delegate, we're living in the era of AI where you can delegate through AI agents, different custom bots, and you don't always have to hire a virtual assistant or hire an online business manager right away, right? You're able to now actually delegate to robots, which is so cool. So that's the first thing. The second thing is for those who have everything in their head. Now, one of the great things that we took from corporate, those of us who run remote companies or work in remote companies, we ditched a lot from, the very straight jacket, stiff jacket type of work. But actually documenting those SOPs is something that I wish more people took, because with all those processes living in your head, not only can you not only are you preventing the people who are supporting you from having a time that makes sense and having the resources to do productive work so that they know what you're thinking, you are also preventing your future self from being even more efficient. And the reason that happens is because every time you do this one thing, so I have a candle here. Sorry, yeah, here. And sometimes I open it like this, but sometimes I open it like this. Sometimes I open it like this, I put this here, I put it down, and I burn it with my electric candle, my electric lighter. But sometimes I open it, I don't put the cover underneath, I put the cover on here. I go to the kitchen, I get the match, I put it here, and then I add it to the other end of the desk. Sometimes I don't use that candle, but instead I use the candle that's in the other room. Those are three different systems, three different ways of doing it, right? Now, if I don't write it down, then I'm not helping my future self from making mistakes. I'm not helping my future self to now do this thing in 5 minutes that used to take me 10 minutes, but because I've done it so many times in the same way, in the same time, I've gotten so good at it and my time has gone down. That's how you save time, right? Because you document. And a lot of times when I talk to founders about documenting, they say, "Oh, Zara, I don't need any documentation because I'm just alone, or I only have one assistant, or document for your future self will thank you." And while some of us are not all, I'm not putting myself in that, but while not everybody wants to become a multimillionaire and have a big empire, I know I do, but while everybody doesn't want that, typically you want peace of mind, and at some point you may need help. Even if you're a solopreneur, you may have a health emergency and you have friends who have to come into the business and help you. You may get pregnant and go on maternity leave and you need somebody to step in. You may need to bring on somebody for Christmas season or tax season, for example. Like I have this one client, she's a solo accountant, but during tax season, she brings on 2 or 3 different people to help her. But if her processes weren't documented, then they have to start all over again because they won't know where to start. And she has to now teach them every single tax season. So you see what I'm saying? If you hold everything in your head, you'll always be reactive and you'll always be the one holding things together. And then the last reason, that is the reason I can talk about for such a long time, is that you have no protected CEO time. So because you don't have any protected CEO or founder, whatever you call yourself, there is no time for you to review what has happened, actually see everything about your business and not just client work. You don't get any time to think. You don't get any time to be intentional, to decide and to make adjustments and to make plans and to check in with your previous plans and to see where you're going. Then you always feel like you don't know where you're going. You always feel like you're not making progress. You're not able to reflect. You're not able to say, okay, this went wrong last week because of that type of situation. What can I do different this week to change that, right? So I always recommend a CEO day. I always recommend a day where you sit and you actually work on your business. That to-do list of things that kind of are giving you a mental load, tackle them bit by bit. Some people may not be able to start with the entire day. I use Mondays and I currently use half day. I don't use the whole day because I'm still in the work a little bit because life isn't perfect, right? But because the block is there, baby, I'm doing that day. I am reflecting on the different contracts that I have. I'm reflecting on the week that has passed. I'm checking on my finances. If anybody is sending me an invoice to pay, they're sending me and I'm paying it on that day. So I am making sure that I'm putting these things in place to give me that time and that space. So if nothing else happens for my business throughout the rest of the week, because I caught it on a Monday, I would have been fine. So if there's a payment that was bounced, I'm catching it on that Monday. 2 weeks will not pass by and a payment fails and I don't catch it. Why? Because I'm using that day to review everything. I have an accountant, but I'm in it. I want to see it. And I don't have to be in it every single day, but I want to have a high level overview. I am in my business. I know what's happening, and you should too. You'll recognize how easily your mental load will lift if you have just a little block of time where you actually give your business some attention. It needs attention to blossom and to bloom. So yeah, so those are the questions that we have today. If you want to learn more about CEO days and you want me to go more into like how we design it, we can talk about that on our next remote business ops line. And definitely please message me on Instagram or on threads at Z the OVM and send in your message and your question for our next ops line. Thank you. Take care. Bye.